Have you ever wondered what your life would be like if, out of nowhere, everything fell apart? If the roof over your head was about to disappear and your children's future was uncertain? Now imagine going through this with no one to help, no support, no apparent way out. It's a suffocating feeling, isn't it? Unfortunately, this is the reality for thousands of people every day. But sometimes, when everything seems lost, destiny has an unbelievable twist in store. And that's exactly what happened to this single mother. She faced a nightmare. Every day was a struggle to ensure food on the table. Every night was a constant fear that this could be the last day under the same roof. But what she didn't know was that someone very special was about to change her life forever. And that someone was none other than Snoop Dogg, yes, the music star, the hip-hop icon, a man who built his career on talent and resilience, but who also carries in his heart a sense of justice that few know about. Have you ever heard of poetic justice? That moment when the universe aligns and makes something extraordinary happen to reward those who really deserve it. Well, this story is one of the most moving examples of that. But what makes this story even more incredible is not just the fact that Snoop Dogg helped this single mother, but as he did it. The way it all happened, the element of surprise, the shocking twist, all of this turned this moment into something no one could have predicted. Now tell me, do you believe that a simple act of kindness can transform an entire life? Or better, do you believe that life can take such unexpected turns that the impossible becomes reality? Get ready, because what you're about to see will leave you speechless and may even change the way you see the power of generosity and true justice. She struggled every day to support her children, but a tragedy left her directionless. No money, no home, and no hope. This single mother, like so many others, carried the weight of the world on her shoulders. He woke up before the sun rose, slept late at night, and still, the fear of tomorrow was a constant shadow in his life. The late rent, the bills piling up, the judgmental looks for not being able to handle everything as society insists on demanding. But how could someone manage everything alone, without support, without help, without a minimum of relief? Every day was a battle. She left early for a job that barely paid her expenses, faced an abusive boss who cared little about her efforts, and, at the end of the day, still needed to muster up the strength to smile at her children, pretending that everything was fine. But it wasn't. She knew she wasn't. Eviction was a real threat. The bills weren't going to go away, and with each notice knocking on her door, the desperation grew. And the most revolting? This was a hard-working, dedicated woman, someone who never asked for anything for free, who always did her best to ensure the best for her family. But the system does not forgive. Life for those born at a disadvantage always seems to work against them, and that was exactly how she felt, against the wall, with no way out, not knowing if the next day she would have a roof over her head. It was in this scenario of injustice and despair that her life crossed paths with someone no one expected. Destiny has mysterious ways of acting, and this time he decided that this woman would no longer face this fight alone. But how did this happen? What made Snoop Dogg notice this story among so many others? What no one knew was that this solo mother was not invisible to everyone. His story, marked by pain and overcoming, reached the right ears. And that's how, on the other side of the country, one of hip-hop's biggest icons, a man known for his legendary career and his strong presence in the music industry, found out what was happening. But what made Snoop Dogg care so much about this woman? What made him not only become aware, but decide to act? What few know is that Snoop Dogg is not just a music star. He's a man who knows the reality of the streets, who understands the weight of the daily struggle, who knows exactly what it means to grow up without privileges. He has seen social injustice up close and knows that often those who most deserve a chance are exactly those who receive it least. And that was why he didn't just listen to this story. He felt this story. He saw in that woman a warrior, a mother who, even in the face of the worst possible scenario, refused to give up. He knew he needed to do something, but he didn't want to just write a check and move on. No, Snoop Dogg wanted to do this the right way. I wanted to make sure this woman really had another chance, so he came up with a plan that would change her life forever. But it wouldn't just be a simple donation or a symbolic gesture. No, what Snoop Dogg was about to do would go far beyond that. And the most surprising thing? This solo mother had no idea what was about to happen. You said, follow up the running text with an engaging CTA, encouraging viewers to comment and interact. Reinforce the importance of respect, justice, and learning this history. Ask them to share their opinions and mention that all comments are read. Remind your audience to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more stories like this. Don't make conclusion. We need to connect the next part. Make a call to next intriguing party. She tried everything. He asked for help, looked for alternatives, but nothing seemed to solve his problem. Every door he knocked seemed to close before his eyes. The days passed like an endless nightmare. She looked at her children and tried to hide her despair, but inside, everything in her screamed for help. The weight of responsibility crushed his shoulders. After all, what else could she do? Work more hours? I no longer slept properly. Ask for loans. No bank trusted her. And ask for help. The world is not always kind to those in need. Then came the final blow, the eviction letter, a cold, impersonal piece of paper stating that she and her children only had a few days to leave. But where to go? To the street? To an overcrowded shelter? To a place where your children wouldn't feel safe? Her heart sped up. He felt the floor disappear. There was no more time. What she feared most was about to happen. The children didn't know what was happening. She couldn't look them in the eye and tell them that maybe, in a few days, they would no longer have a roof over their heads. But children feel it. They notice the tension in the air. They notice their mother's forced smile. They notice the increasingly heavy silence. The oldest started to ask, "Mommy, why are you sad?" How to answer this question? How can we explain that despite all the effort, all the work, all the struggle, life only seemed to want to push them even further down? And then came that night, the night she collapsed. Alone, after her children went to sleep, she sat on the sofa in the living room and cried. He cried because he didn't know what to do. She cried because she was tired. She cried because, despite everything, she felt like the world didn't care. Have you ever had this feeling? That no one sees your pain, that no one cares about what you're going through? But this is where this story starts to take a different turn. Because while that single mom was drowning in despair, something unexpected was about to happen. A force she hadn't even imagined was moving towards her. Fate, which until then seemed to just turn its back on him, was preparing a turn of events that no one could have predicted. But at that moment, she didn't know that. All she knew was that time was running against her. The relentless clock ticked down the minutes until the day he would have to leave the house with nowhere to go. She made one last effort. He tried once again. He looked for help everywhere he could. He called acquaintances, knocked on NGOs' doors, sent messages to support groups, but the answers were always the same. We are overwhelmed. Unfortunately, we can't do anything at the moment. Good luck. Good luck? As if luck was something she could just pick up off a grocery store shelf. Then the next day, something happened. A friend who knew her struggle and could no longer bear to see her suffer took action. Without her knowing, this friend decided to tell her story. She posted it on social media, reported her trajectory, showed the world what this woman was facing. But at that moment, no one knew that this post would reach the eyes of someone who could really make a difference. And that person was none other than Snoop Dogg. Yes, Snoop Dogg, the hip-hop icon, the man who built an empire with his music and his charisma, the artist who has overcome countless adversities in life and never forgotten his roots. Someone who knew better than anyone what it was like to fight to survive. And more than that, someone who understood the importance of reaching out at the right time. Now stop and think. How many stories like this go unnoticed every day? How many mothers struggle, cry, fight, and simply don't receive the help they deserve? And how often does a turnaround like this actually happen? Snoop Dogg saw this story and felt he needed to act. But what he did was far beyond what anyone could have imagined. Now I want to hear from you. What would you do if you were in this mother's shoes? Have you ever been in a situation where there seemed to be no way out? Comment below with the word justice, because this story will show you that sometimes life makes a point of surprising. And if this story has touched you so far, leave a like, because this helps to get this message to more people. Subscribe to the channel to catch up on everything that comes next, because the most unbelievable part is yet to come. What Snoop Dogg did next will leave everyone speechless. Snoop Dogg has always believed that no one should go through this alone. And this time, he was about to change a life forever. He wasn't the type to just watch injustice happen. He knew better than anyone how cruel the world could be to those who needed help most. Growing up on the streets of Long Beach, Snoop saw up close what the daily struggle to survive was like. He knew what it was like to be judged, underestimated, and ignored. And maybe that's why this story touched your heart in a different way. It was on an ordinary night, while scrolling through social media, that he came across that post. That single mother's story hit him like a punch in the gut. He read every word, saw every detail, and felt something he hadn't felt in a long time, the immediate need to act. He knew he had the power to change that destiny, but Snoop Dogg was never one to just make a donation and move on with his life. He wanted that moment to be special. I wanted that woman to not only receive help, but to feel the real impact of justice being served. Then he had an idea, a plan that would make this turn of events even more memorable. He didn't want her to know right away that she was being helped by him. I wanted her to live the experience, to feel the surprise, to have that moment of redemption that we so often see in films. But this time, it would be real. Snoop Dogg started making moves behind the scenes. She called influential people, used her network of contacts, and began to chart a path that would take that mother from absolute hopelessness to the biggest surprise of her life. But he didn't just want to pay his bills or write a check. He wanted something bigger. He wanted to make sure she had a real future, a solid foundation to start over. That's how he decided he wouldn't just give a temporary gift. He would give a house. Yes, a house, a home, something no one could ever take away from her and her children. The roof she feared losing would be replaced with something permanent, a place where she could sleep peacefully without fear of tomorrow. And that wasn't all. He wanted to do this the right way. No exaggerated spotlights, without her immediately knowing what was happening. He wanted that moment to be genuine, something she would cherish forever. While she was still fighting, looking for alternatives that didn't exist, without knowing that someone so powerful was already working to change everything, Snoop Dogg put his plan into action. He made a point of keeping everything confidential. He wanted to see her expression when she found out. I wanted to feel the emotion of that moment. With each passing day, her deadline to leave the house shortened. Every second was a battle against time. And on the other side, Snoop was speeding up his preparations. The house he had chosen was more than just a residence. He made sure it was a dignified, safe, and comfortable place. In the end, no one should live in fear of losing their home. But there was still one important detail. How would he reveal this surprise? How to ensure that she not only received the news, but that she felt the weight of this change deep in her soul. And that's when the most unexpected part of the plan came about. Snoop Dogg decided that himself would deliver the news. But he wouldn't do it anyway. He wanted to be face to face with this mother. I wanted to see the impact of this turnaround with my own eyes. I wanted to feel the moment of turning point. But the big question was, how would this woman react to discovering that one of the greatest artists in the world was about to change her life forever? Now I ask you, if it were you in this solo mother's place, how would you react? Could you believe that something so great is about to happen? Comment the word below, Snoop, because the most exciting part of this story is yet to come. And if you want to see this turnaround happen, leave a like now and subscribe to the channel, because in the next episode of this story, Snoop Dogg enters the scene. And what happens next is simply unbelievable. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Was it true? Who was that man? And when the penny dropped, The tears came. The day was cloudy, that kind of time that seemed to reflect exactly what she felt inside. Uncertainty, fear, exhaustion. The minutes seemed to pass faster than usual, and the anguish increased as the eviction deadline approached. Their children played without knowing that, within a few hours, they could be homeless. How could she tell them the truth? How could I look into the children's innocent eyes and say I didn't know where they were going? But that day, something different happened. In the midst of the chaos, an unknown man appeared. He arrived without attracting attention, wearing simple clothes, a low cap covering part of his face, like someone who just wanted to go unnoticed. He approached with a discreet smile, as if he just wanted to hear a story. "Hey, how's it going?" he said in a friendly but firm tone of voice. She looked at him suspiciously. I was already used to strangers who showed up just to judge or give empty advice. But something about him seemed different. He asked about her life, about your story, about everything she had faced so far. At first she hesitated. After all, what could a stranger do for her? But perhaps out of tiredness, or simply because she needed to vent, she began to tell. He talked about the sleepless nights, the unstable jobs, the moments when he thought about giving up, but held firm for the sake of his children. She talked about the countless attempts to find a way out, the no's she heard, the doors that closed. The man listened to everything in silence, just nodding his head and observing carefully. He didn't interrupt her. He didn't try to minimize her pain. He just let her talk. Something in her began to relax. She felt like, for the first time in a long time, someone was actually listening. Then out of nowhere he dropped the bombshell. "This house is yours now." Time seemed to stop. She blinked a few times, trying to process what she had just heard. His heart raced. Had I heard right? Was it some kind of prank? His mind fought the idea that this could be real. She laughed nervously, waiting for him to say he was joking. But he wasn't. The man took off his cap, revealing the face she never expected to see there, right in front of her. Snoop Dogg. The shock was immediate. His breathing caught. The hands shook. Was it really him? The hip-hop icon? The man she so often saw on TV and heard in songs? But what was he doing there? The tears came before she could even say anything. She covered her mouth with her hands, trying to stop herself from crying, but it was impossible. The weight of everything she had been through collapsed in that instant. All the fears, all the sleepless nights, all the times he thought no one cared, all of that exploded in a whirlwind of emotions. Snoop Dogg just smiled and said calmly, "I saw your story, and no one deserves to go through that. Now this house is yours. You will never have to worry about not having a home for your children again." She fell to her knees on the floor, tears flowing uncontrollably. Her children, not really understanding what was happening, ran to her and asked if everything was okay. With her voice breaking, she simply replied, "It's more than fine. We have a house." The children jumped with joy, without even fully understanding what it meant. But she understood. She knew this wasn't just a gift. It was a second chance. And you, what would you do if you were in this mother's place? Could you believe that something like this could really happen? Comment the word here, exciting, to show that this story touched you. And if you want to see what happened after this incredible moment, leave a like now and subscribe to the channel, because the most exciting part is yet to come. What Snoop Dogg did next was even more surprising. The scene was chilling, a mix of emotion, surprise, and gratitude that made the world moved by this incredible story. The mother, still kneeling on the floor, tried to process what had just happened. Tears were streaming down her face without her being able to control them. His chest rose and fell in deep sobs, as if every emotion he had built up over the years was being released all at once. Her children, not fully understanding the enormity of that moment, ran to hug her. The small hands held her shoulders as they asked anxiously, "Mommy, what's going on?" She tried to speak, but her voice just wouldn't come out. How can we explain to those children that after so many nights sleeping in fear, after so many uncertainties, after so many times wondering if they would be able to continue, now had everything changed? How to tell them that from that moment on, they would never again have to worry about whether they would have a roof over their heads? It was then that Snoop Dogg, still standing in front of her, bent down slightly and placed his hand on her shoulder with a sincere smile. He didn't say much because he didn't need to. With a calm voice, he looked into her eyes and simply said, "Everyone deserves a home and a new chance." Those words went straight to her heart. It was as if, for the first time in a long time, someone was recognizing her struggle, her pain, and her resilience. She never wanted charity, never asked for alms. All she wanted was an opportunity to move on, a breather, a respite from this unfair battle she had been facing for so long. And now, without waiting, without even imagining that a miracle like this could happen, this chance had finally arrived. She hugged her children with all the strength she had. He felt the warmth of those little bodies, and, for the first time in a long time, he managed to smile through the tears. But this time, it wasn't a forced smile. It wasn't a smile to hide the pain. It was a real smile of relief, of gratitude, of victory. Snoop Dogg just watched that scene with a satisfied look. He had already done many things in his life. He had already achieved a level of success that few in the world could imagine. But at that moment, seeing that family reborn before his eyes, he knew that nothing could compare to this. The people around, who had previously only been following the conversation from a distance, began to realize what was happening. Someone took out their cell phone and started recording. The buzz grew. People looked at Snoop Dogg. They looked at that mother on her knees, at the children clinging to her, and they began to understand the magnitude of that moment. And then something incredible happened. Neighbors, who often saw her walking down the street with her head down, struggling to hide her reality, began to approach. Some with tears in their eyes, others holding their hearts in their chests, too emotional to speak. An elderly woman touched her shoulder gently and said, "You deserve." That was enough to make her cry even more, because for so long she believed she didn't deserve it. Life had taught her that people like her, mothers who fought alone, who did everything for their children, but still struggled to survive, were simply unlucky. But now, at that moment, in front of everyone, she saw that her story was not invisible. The kids, now understanding a little more, looked at Snoop Dogg in awe. The oldest pulled his mother's shirt and whispered, "Mommy, he's famous, isn't he?" She smiled through her tears and nodded. Snoop Dogg laughed and rubbed the boy's head. "I'm just a guy who likes to help when he can." The humility in his words made everyone around him feel even more respect for him. At that moment, he wasn't just a music legend. He wasn't just an international star. He was a human being who cared. The cell phones continued recording. The video of that scene would soon be shared thousands of times, traveling the world, moving millions of people who still believed that acts of kindness could transform lives. And now, tell me, have you ever seen a story as moving as this? Do you believe that good always comes back? Comment the word here, miracle, if this story touched your heart, and if you thought this moment was incredible. Just wait until you see what happened next. What Snoop Dogg did next was even more unexpected, and the entire world's reaction was jaw-dropping. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications because this story is far from over. This story spread around the world and inspired millions of people. Proof that a simple act of kindness can change lives. What began as an intimate moment full of emotion and gratitude soon took on unimaginable proportions. The video of the single mother crying with emotion upon discovering that she had a new home quickly began to circulate on social media. Within hours, it had already accumulated thousands of views. Within days, millions of people around the world were watching, commenting, and sharing this incredible twist. The images spoke for themselves. The woman fell to her knees, her hands shaking as she tried to process what had just happened. The children hugged her, laughing and crying at the same time, not knowing exactly what that meant, but feeling their mother's genuine happiness. And Snoop Dogg, there in the middle, calm, not looking for recognition, just happy to have done something that really mattered. The impact was immediate. The comments were a flood of emotion. People from all over the world said that this was proof that there was still goodness in the world. Some shared their own stories, telling about times when they needed help and received support from a stranger. Others said they were inspired to do the same and help someone around them. And it didn't stop there. Celebrities began to react to the video. Artists, athletes, influencers, and even politicians commented on Snoop Dogg's attitude. Many said it was an example of how people who have influence can and should use it to do good. Others recalled old stories of the rapper's generosity, highlighting that he always had this human side and that this gesture was just another proof of his giant heart. There were people who simply couldn't believe it. "Is this real?" they asked in the comments. The twist was so big it looked like a movie script, but it was real. This single mother, who until a few days ago didn't know if she would have a roof over her head, now had a forever home. And then something unexpected happened. The community around her also began to mobilize. People who previously might not have noticed her or even known her story were now willing to help. Neighbors began to approach. Some local companies offered to furnish the new home. A neighborhood market ensured she would have enough supplies for the first few months. Snoop Dogg's gesture didn't just change her life, he created a domino effect of kindness. What started as a simple act turned into a movement. People realized that sometimes all it takes is one action to bring out the best in others. And of course, the press didn't take long to get into this story. Major news portals reported on the case. Television channels showed the video of the surprise, highlighting the single mother's emotional reaction and the impact of Snoop Dogg's attitude. In interviews, philanthropy experts said that gestures like this not only help a single person, but create a wave of inspiration that can transform thousands of lives. And that's exactly what happened. People all over the world began to ask themselves, what can I do to help someone today? And now I want to hear from you. Did this story touch you? Do you believe that good always comes back? Comment the word here, inspiration, to show that you too believe in the power of kindness. And if you thought that was amazing, just wait until you see what happened next. Snoop Dogg's attitude generated a reaction that no one expected. And the world's response was simply unbelievable. So subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications because this story isn't over yet. And you? What did you think of Snoop Dogg's attitude? Leave your comment and share this story to inspire more people. The impact of this story was far beyond what anyone could have imagined. What began as a simple act of kindness turned into a powerful symbol of justice, hope, and turnaround. In a world where so many stories of injustice make us lose faith in humanity, this single mother proved that sometimes destiny has surprises in store for us that no one could predict. Now think for a moment. How many people live this same reality every day? How many mothers, fathers, entire families struggle silently against difficulties that seem insurmountable? How many honest workers are ignored by the system, forced to choose between paying a bill or putting food on the table? What happened to this woman could have happened to anyone. But what this story teaches us is that good still exists. That one act of generosity can be enough to change everything. Snoop Dogg, one of the biggest icons in music and pop culture, used his influence and resources to do something great. But most importantly, he showed us that kindness doesn't just have to come from the great. Anyone can make a difference. Anyone can be a turning point in someone else's life. Now I ask, what if it were you? If you had the chance to change someone's life, would you do it? Do you believe that good always comes back? Have you ever been in a situation where you were helped by someone when you least expected it? Tell us here in the comments. Let's make this story reach more people, because, who knows, it might inspire someone to do the same. And it doesn't stop there. This story had such a powerful effect that Snoop Dogg himself had an unexpected reaction after seeing the worldwide repercussion of his attitude. What he did next left a lot of people's jaws dropped. If you want to know what happened next, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because this story is far from over. If you followed this story this far, it's because you know how much respect, empathy, and justice make a difference in the world. And if this story touched you, I want to see you in the comments. Write it below. Respect is worth more than luxury. To show that you are here, that you believe in the power of kindness, and that you want to see more stories like this. And if this video moved you, leave a like now, because this helps this message reach even more people. Let's spread this story and inspire more people to do good. Now, if you want to see more incredible stories like this, don't leave the channel. Click on the next video that appears on the screen and continue watching exciting moments, unbelievable twists and lessons that life teaches in the most unexpected way. It is clear. Subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell, because here you will always find stories that touch your heart and prove that justice may take a while, but it always arrives. See you in the next video.